back, folks. So those of you that know me know that aside of working full-time for the last 20 plus, almost 25 years, I've ran a handyman service, kind of a jack of all trades type deal, trying to help people out in the area because prices of things are so ridiculous, and labor rates and things like that. I don't make a ton of money, but I try to help people out. And so anyway, I'm here today. Figured I'd do a video while I was doing this job. Customer had an above ground pool, it's a 20-foot pool, and I apologize, the wind is cranking today. It was getting ready to dump on us. We haven't had very many good days this year. As a matter of fact, we've had like 26 or 27 weekends in a row where it's done nothing but storm, and in between during the week really hasn't been that great either. So anyway, their sand filter failed. The tank itself that holds the sand, the sides where it gets molded together, grenaded on them basically under pressure from sitting out in the elements. And I'm replacing it today. They tried to repair it, didn't work. I've already replaced the skimmer. I'll show you guys that and then go from there, but let me spin you around. All right, so anyway, got the new skimmer on. Always make sure that the liner stays where it's supposed to be. Cheap trick is you can always get a new clean plunger. You could plunge it on the side, and that'll help with tension on the if the liner's trying to slide down on you. New hose coming down. This is the old filter system, and you can see where they tried to repair it. It had just blown out on both sides right here, and water was actually spouting out under pressure. It looked like one of those yard sprayers you put on the end of your hose. So that failed. Anyway, on to new. So this new model that I'm putting in is another Hayward. It's a Pro Series. Not that it matters. It's basically the same for any of these sand filters for the most part, this style. This one comes with a base, the filter, and a brand new pump and assembly. It's around, I think it's $750 to $800 for the unit. But again, it comes with the pump and the filter. Sand is separate. This unit here in particular will take 3 bags of sand. So my biggest tip at the moment for you guys, if you're doing this on your own, it says in the instructions to fill it halfway. I fill it at least a third. You can't see down in there. Yeah, kind of. I fill it at least a third. Make sure that all the jets down the bottom are straight down. They can fold up. And make sure that your cap stays on. Some of them are plastic, some of them are cardboard. And that keeps your pipe dead center while you're putting sand in. What you want to do is you want to trickle sand down into it until the bottom is solid and stable. And then you can start readily putting more sand in. Just make sure that that pipe doesn't shift one way or the other. You want it to stay dead center so that when you hook your assembly on top, it's dead center and you don't have to fight with it to try to move it over, because when you get a couple 100 pounds of sand in here, it's a nightmare to try to push that over. Can't really do this one-handed, but I just wanted to give you, for instance, I'll start getting that sand in there and get the bottom where it needs to be before I start putting the rest of the sand in, and then give you another look, and then go from there. Another tip, don't trust any of these. Always put a good amount of Teflon on, as much as you can, and still be able to thread. That's with all of the connections, because they tend to leak. And if they don't leak right now, once it's pressurized, they probably will. And you don't want to have to go through that ordeal. So anyway, still got a ground wire there. Going to connect to that ground wire for the pump, and onward. So I'll be back. All right, I changed my mind. I'm going to try to attempt to do this one-handed if I can, hopefully, if you guys bear with me. Anyways, make yourself a cup. You can use a measuring cup, whatever you got on hand, as long as it's clean and you're not putting any kind of contaminants in the system. That's fine. Again, fresh water down in there. I'm a little over a third full. You just want to kind of work it in and then do that until the bottom, you've got those jets down in the bottom. See if I can get it to focus. There's a couple of them there. They're all the way around it. Once those are fully submerged and seated, you want to make sure your sand is as flat as possible. Once those are submerged and seated, then you can progress with putting the sand in a little quicker. But as I stated, you always want to make sure this center pipe stays dead center, no matter what you do. So you guys don't need to sit here and watch me do this. I just figured, for instance, I would show you, try to give you more visual instead of going to the next part and then being like, well, what happened there? So anyway, I'm going to put this just above those. I'll either reach down in there, or I'll find something that I can reach down in there with, and just make sure that those are good and seated and covered. And once I know those are good and in place, I'll progress to putting the sand in a little quicker. But again, it's not rocket science. You don't need to be in a hurry, although I've got a thunderstorm bearing down on me right now. That's why the wind is cranking. I'm pretty close to the jets being covered right now, so I'm going to get down in there. See if I can get it to focus. They're right at the top of the jets. Go a little bit more. Get it tamped down, start getting the sand in, and then once I get the sand up to level and flattened off, good and flat, make sure this is centered, we'll get to the other part. All right. Okay. We got all the sand in as close to centered as possible on that pipe. So when we put the filter system on, or the pump system on, everything's good there. The directions on this say to leave the sand, because the differences in the sand, because there's different types of sand to use, a minimum of 10 inches from the top. However, I've installed quite a few of these, and I know that 3 full bags brings it up to about 6.5 inches from the top, and that runs optimal on this particular unit. So follow your instructions. If you want to put a little bit more in and you think it's okay, that's fine, but try to follow your instructions. You don't have to drive yourself crazy sitting there measuring, oh, I'm an 1/8 inch off. You do want to try to get it somewhat level and flat as possible, and then get ready to install the top portion. So this particular Hayward, the top portion is pretty much assembled. You got your guard here, that's all good, everything's hooked on, everything's ready to rock and roll on that. You gotta put your thread tape. If you want to use thread putty, you can. I like to be able to remove them easily and replace them if needed be, so I always just use the tape and put a heavy dose on it for all your inlets and outlets. Always check and make sure that this guy is seated. See how that one is not? I'll throw some thread tape on that as well. That's your sight glass to see how you're running and whether or not you need to bleed, or bleed. Well, basically you're bleeding it. You're backwashing the system until that, if that's running dirty, you backwash your system out, the waste side, until that's pretty much clear again, and then you can put it back on filter and keep running until the pool is clean. It's got your lock ring and the seal you got to put on when you put it on the top of the tank. So that goes up against here and the bottom of that flange, and then that lock ring squeezes both of them together on there, and we'll get to that here in a minute. But I want to pre-tape everything up and get it ready to go. Little side note, the wind's getting bad again. Hopefully you guys can hear me. So the unit comes with Teflon. If you're going to use tape, always have or buy some extra, because again, I like to put a heavy dose on it to try to save myself headaches and later on. Just 1 or 2 wraps really doesn't suit me. You can do whatever you want to do, but I always pick up extra tape just to have. Makes me feel better, and I can tighten everything up, you know, fairly snug, and kind of helps me sleep at night knowing that I'm not going to, you know, customer's not going to spring a leak, whatever, you know. You guys do whatever you want, but that's just my side note. If you're going to use tape, use it. So when I'm putting these fittings on, like I said, I use a good amount of tape. I tape this, make sure it's snug. Don't forget your plug. Not all units have one of these plugs, but if it does, use it. Make sure you got the tape on it and seated. This is seated. You don't want to go too much more than as tighted by hand as you can get it, because it's very, very brittle. You can break it very easily. I still have the one for the pump, but I got to look at the pump and see how I want to do that. I may have to cut the hose that comes with it. That hose right there goes from the pump to this for your sand filter, and depending on where I'm going to have it sitting, I may have to cut that down. So just keep that in mind. You may have to adjust things for your setup, but the kit really does come with everything you need. I can't say anything bad about Hayward. Everything seems to be up to par. Up until today, I really never had a problem with them. If they're maintained, if they're drained properly in the wintertime and stored properly in the wintertime, shouldn't have any issues with it for quite a while. Anyway, onward. All right, as I stated, got the pump out. Everything does come with its own set of instructions. The filter came with its own set of instructions. The top unit come with its own set of instructions. The pump itself comes with its own set of instructions. Follow them, read them. However, just for quick reference, this pump, some of them come with a drain plug for winterizing on the pump and on here. This one only comes on here. For whatever reason, they decided not to put one on the pump, which is not a big deal. Again, if it's drained properly in the wintertime, you shouldn't have any issues. Even though this was already in there, I pulled it, I taped it, put it back in, snugged it up good. Again, I overkill it because I'd rather do that now and save trouble down the road than to be coming back to fix something again that should have been fixed in the first place. So now the fun part is onward to set up and see if I can get what I want for that line, and if I have to cut it, and start dry fitting everything and mounting. Okay, so I got to clamp this down. The gasket's already in there. That part can be a pain in the butt. If you don't have patience, you may want to find somebody that can help you that does have patience, because it takes some finagling sometimes. This one looks like it may go on easier than most, but there are times when that clamp will give you a fit. Anyway, just be ready for that. Secondly, I had to remove this part that I had already put in, like a bonehead, because I forgot. Normally, the pump is on this side and the return line to go to the pool is on the opposite, which would be ideal because the skimmer's on this side and the return line's on that side. However, this one's opposite, so your line coming from the pump has to go over or under. You got to decide which way you want to go that valve before you put that on, which is kind of a pain in the neck, but anyway, we'll get her one way or the other. Always make sure you got your clamps ready to go. You don't want to have everything hooked up and then realize you forgot a clamp. I always pre-hang my other one on there. This base system comes with bolts to mount the plate for your pump down, which is nice. And then you got your port for your ground right here, which is obviously, I'm going to clean this up and be connected to the ground, which is solidly ground down in. Very important as well. So anyway, we'll get to that step and then move on. Now, what I will say is, if there's anything at all about the Hayward system that we're installing that I don't like as a negative, it's very minuscule, but To me, I don't like any inconveniences. That's just the way I am. Especially when it comes to customers, I'm pretty picky. For the price that you pay for this system, that base, these bolts for the pump, are it's threaded plastic that these bolt into. There's not an actual nut in there. And I kind of wish that they had an actual nut in it, because these are a bugger to get out. You can see that, I mean, the plastic is just stuck in there. I'm going to have to clean every one of these threads out before I can try to put them back in. They are kind of a pain to get out. Just be ready for that, because they do not have actual nuts in them. They're just threaded plastic, which is kind of a poor design, but it does work. So anyway, that's my one negative about this whole system. Call it what you will, but yeah, it kind of bugs me. All right, gonna try to do this real quick because it's raining and it's gonna start downpouring. So this little plug that I told you guys about, not all of them have it. The customer originally told me they wanted this plug in, but they want the gauge put on so that they can monitor, which is a good idea. If you have a gauge, use it. But originally they told me that they wanted the plug in, not to worry about the gauge. Then they changed their mind. They want the gauge on there, so no big deal. Take that plug out, tape this thing up good, screw this on, seat it good, move forward. I got everything on here as best I can at the moment. Got to hook that ground up, and then hook my lines from the pool in, and then bleed as much air out as possible, which is always a good idea. Put my clamp on there, and we should be good for a test run. But that's the basics. Just follow the directions as much as possible. If I missed anything and you guys have any questions, reach out. That's fine. I have no problem with that. I answer comments with no issues. So no such thing as a dumb question except for the one that wasn't asked. Anyway, thanks for watching, guys. Appreciate it.